Hello, and welcome to the FLOURISH Podcast,
where we at the Palouse Conservation District interview farmers, ranchers, and researchers on topics in conservation agriculture. FLOURISH, also known as Farmers Leading Our United Revolution in Soil Health, is a farmer-led conservation innovation project to support the widespread adoption of soil health practices by integrating cover crops and livestock into farming operations.
The ambitious purpose of FLOURISH is to not only regenerate our soils, but also our rural communities by creating opportunities for younger generations to return to productive, sustainable farms.
On this podcast, we bring you updates from on-farm trials, research findings, and advice from farmers.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today on Barstar Farms in Colton, Washington with Allen Druffel. Allen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your farm, where it is, how much rain you get.
Never enough rain. We're in southeast Whitman County, farm Colton and Uniontown, and as well as south of Lewiston, Idaho, in the Tammany area. It's pretty diverse for rainfall. The lower country gets about 8 inches up to 20 plus on some of our better farms. Do everything from wheat fallow to pretty intense multi-year rotations. Try to raise different crops, so not just wheat and barley. Do garbanzos, peas, canola, mustard, flax, oats. Do a little alfalfa, and as well as dabbling in some cows.
Cool. Yeah, we're excited to talk about cows.
I'm more excited to talk about them than have them. So.
That's good. Yeah, so one of the goals of having this podcast is that we're just talking to a bunch of the farmers that are participating in the FLOURISH project, which again is Farmers Leading Our United Revolution in Soil Health. And I know you've been experimenting with cover crops and different crop rotations for a long time. I was wondering if you could talk maybe a little bit about that, and then what got you interested in joining the program?
Yeah, we got started in cover crops with the idea of bettering the soil and decreasing our synthetic inputs. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. You know, we want to have a healthy soil that revitalizes itself and provides more of the nutrients than us just streaming on the synthetics. So that's why we started. Probably 10 years ago, multi-species cover crops, 10, 12 species in a mix. We kind of had this idea that we'd go out and we'd plant those, and overnight our soil would become a garden and we could reduce all our inputs by about half. And life was good. Yeah. It didn't work that way. Yeah. We've really learned a lot on these multi-species stuff, the different blends, and whether you're grass heavy or forb heavy or summer annuals, winter annuals, warm season, cool season, it all matters. And so when you go into cover cropping, you really have to have a specific goal in mind for that crop. Mm-hmm. So that's how we got started. Did that for quite a while. The more we learn about it, the more animal integration seems to be the route that we're going to have to go if we really want to utilize cover crops to their full potential.
Yeah. Is that because it would help fill a gap for not taking a commodity crop off of that piece of ground, or?
I think that's one of the goals with the animals, mm-hmm. To try to have a little potential income in that year. I'm not sure converting covers into protein is a reality financially, mm-hmm. but if you can factor in what you're doing for the soil, possibly.
Yeah.
And so it's a long-term game.
Yeah.
The 1 year, and I have figured out, maybe someone else has, but the single year financial aspect of this seems like it's going to be a loser.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully we're going to reap the benefits from 1 year loss for multiple years. And if you can amortize that over 10 years, mm-hmm. then the 1 year covers and animals could really have a good payback for you.
Yeah, that's cool. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just how you're fitting. Maybe you could talk about your crop rotation and then how cover crops are fitting into that.
Yeah. Traditional cover crop, and our cows are on our higher rainfall stuff right now. I haven't moved them into low rainfall. It's easier just because that's where my house is located. It's on kind of the better soil of our farm. I wanted the cows close to it. Mm-hmm. And so really that was the decision as to where they are. It is logistically, it's easy. And so in that particular rainfall zone, we're a 3-year rotation. Most of it's winter wheat, spring grain, spring pulse, or spring brassica. And of those 3 rotations, 8 out of 10 years, the one that makes the least amount of money is spring grain, whether that's spring barley or spring wheat. And so I'm taking that one out of rotation.
Oh, cool.
So that was the reason for that. But now, thanks to Flourish, which is providing us a little financial assistance, I'm going to try taking for 4 years straight and putting just cows in cover and seeing what that will do for the long-term soil health benefits. If we can just start taking small acreages out, focusing on the soil health and a break from the heavy loads of synthetics, salt-heavy inputs, and try to get the biology to start cycling naturally.
So it's funny, there's 27 farmers participating, and I'd say after last year, 10 of them are going to leave the cover crops in the same place.
Are they?
Yeah, which is very cool. Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is, we can church it up and make it sound cool and that we're doing this strictly for agronomic reasons, but it's also, we're pretty lazy.
Yeah.
And once you have the infrastructure there,
it
is significantly easier.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us realized how hard setting up the infrastructure would be. It seems easy to go string a hot wire and take a couple of gallons of water out to them, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of water and a lot that goes into making that hot wire sound.
Yeah. It was funny when we were out in your plots this summer. I remember the first time I walked, I was like, oh, whoa, this is way bigger. Just because you had to spray where all the hot wire was.
Yeah.
And then everything. And that was things I hadn't thought of before.
Yeah. Well, and I the first year we did it, I didn't recognize that either.
Yeah.
And so what'll happen is that cover crop will grow up into your electric fence and it grounds it and it makes it useless.
And then your cows are
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went and sprayed underneath the hot wire and you have to maintain that.
Yeah.
It's not just a once and done.
Yeah, totally.
So you're always out there doing something with the cows.
Yeah. That's great. So just jumping back to the cover crops specifically though, I know you've came and spoke at a bunch of conservation district events. And a bunch of years ago, I remember you said, I'm just throwing things at the wall until they stick. Maybe you.
I could have. Sounds like me.
Was there so if you've been experimenting with this stuff for 10 years, was there anything that has stuck or that you've continued to do? It could be mixes, certain species, whatever.
Yeah, not in the cover crop world.
Yeah.
It seems like radishes and turnips, I like growing those. Part of it is just the visual reward.
Yeah.
You get the big things out in your field, and I'm not sure they're doing a lot for our soil. One thing I pulled out of more than just covers is multi-species stuff, is starting to do some interseeding. And I'm doing that on forage crops. We're going to push that a little bit more. This year, we're going to do barley, oats, peas, and flax. And I think they call it peelage with the barley and oats. And that's fairly common, but adding the flax in there really does seem to help with the soil. So,
yeah, and you've told me in the past, you like flax.
I love flax.
Yeah.
I don't know what it does.
Yeah.
I know there's some mycorrhizal reaction with oats and feeding fungi in the soil. That's proven.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. Whatever it's worth. I really like flax.
Yeah.
I tried to grow flax straight as a crop. It's okay. If the market's there, you can make a little bit of money on it. Logistically, because we're doing it on small acreages, we aren't just set up to go hammer it out, do a really good job.
Yeah.
It makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah. Do you think, we've just been talking about this a lot lately, interseeding or intercropping, maybe a commodity with flax or something like that.
Yeah.
It seems like they can do this in Canada.
They're doing it.
Yeah. And maybe the infrastructure isn't quite ready here. But if it was, do you think that'd be something that you would do or other folks would do? Or is it a good idea even? I don't know.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I like new ideas.
Yeah.
Whether they're good ideas, they're new ideas, and they're fun, something else to do. But I don't know. I mean, they're making money. They're financially, it's proven in Canada. Mm-hmm. I think the rainfall patterns are different. Mm-hmm. And with summer rain, I think maybe there's a little bit more opportunity to harvest that moisture where we got to store it all. Mm-hmm. In the spring and winter, our crops just seem to behave differently than theirs do. But I know there's other farmers in the area. They're doing peas and canola. Mm-hmm. We're doing the flax and oats. Flax and garbs is one that we've tried.
Oh, cool.
That worked pretty good. Other than that, I know there's more to it.
Yeah.
Like when I did my flax and garbs, it actually financially was pretty good.
Did it?
Until I had to take it to the cleaner.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So did you get dinged when you got it?
Oh, but it did not dinged. I went into eyes wide open, recognizing that I was going to have flaxseed and garb seed together.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to go pay to have it cleaned.
Okay.
And I didn't recognize how expensive that was going to be. And that took all the profit out of it.
Yeah, bummer.
Yeah. But it was pretty cool, so it brought the garbanzos to maturity earlier.
Uh-huh.
And so our harvest was actually earlier. Flax and garbs are typically late. We're going to push those into September.
Uh-huh.
And the weather can start changing. We can get more water.
Yeah.
We were harvesting that 2 weeks before anybody else was cutting a garb.
Oh, whoa.
And so that could be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So
if we could get them cleaned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cleaned. Yeah. If I was going to do this on large acreage and I set up my own cleaner, had the infrastructure ready to go, yeah, I think so. But taking that next step from a 10-acre play around trial
Mm-hmm.
to 100 acres or 150 or 1,000,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big step.
What do you think about I'm sort of getting off track here, but like a mobile cleaning unit? Is that possible? Like if there was a business out there where somebody would like come and you could just dump it into a mobile cleaning system, would that be something that folks would be doing?
Oh, probably not.
Yeah.
Again, it's the infrastructure.
Yeah.
You think about a mobile cleaning system,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have one truck in and two trucks out.
Yeah.
And so now you have 3 trucks sitting in the field to just sort this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, like I said, there's more to it. All of this stuff sounds awesome.
Yeah, totally.
And it sounds awesome in January. In August, that's a different story.
Right. Yeah.
All we want to do is get the crop in. And usually by August, I'm so frustrated and frankly tired of farming. Just burn out.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
Yep.
So you lose sight of your goals in the winter pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's also interesting. I heard the guys from P&W talk a couple summers ago, and they were like, yeah, we can separate and clean seed, but you can't just show up with, we need a big heads up.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to pay, like you were saying, you're going to have to pay for it. So.
Yeah. No, yeah. And most of our local co-ops that have the ability to clean are willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, yeah, it's the planning, and they have to dedicate space just for that.
Yeah.
And when it's on a small scale, dedicating that space is pretty difficult.
Yeah, so it's not worth it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they make it worth it for them, and then we can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Huh. So can we get into your adventures in cattle?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like you have a really good story. I mean, we had an event last week called the Alternative Cropping Symposium, and Alan told a really good story about that, about how he got into it. So maybe could you talk about that experience?
Yeah, it was wild. I've never been a cowboy. I've never been around. My grandfather had cattle. My dad didn't have cattle, and my dad never liked them. And I never understood. We'd have 1 or 2 cows across the road when I was a kid, and we'd raise them, but he never wanted cattle. And so 3 years ago, in 2018, when we moved on to the homestead, we got some cows as lawnmowers, and they were fine. I had 5 cows on 10 acres. They came in June, mowed the lawn, left in September when the lawn was mowed. And so they were great at getting a pasture down, and they gave me this false sense of comfort around cows.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, geez, these things aren't too bad. They're pretty calm. They stay in the fence. They just kind of do what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so then in 2022, we partnered with a cattle operation out of Oregon and went big. And so it started with about 70 acres of cover crop. And we were a little unsure on the number of cattle that were going to come. It turned out to be 180 pair. So we had 180 mamas and 180 babies and a few bulls running around. And we weren't ready at all. We had the fence in and the cover crop was planted. We invested a ton of money into water infrastructure, but we weren't ready for them. The crop didn't grow. It was one of the wettest Junes we've ever had on record.
Yeah.
It was super cold, and they came and ate that entire cover crop in about 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we didn't have any backup plan, and so it was a bit of a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up grazing some alfalfa just to get them something to eat, and then we moved them over into some canyon that luckily we found. And that was through a lot of phone calls and a lot of scrambling, and got them out of there. Hoped the cover crop would regrow, but it never caught up.
Yeah.
So
So then they just spent the rest of the summer in the canyon, or did they come back?
No, they came back, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
I didn't really want them back. I was already burnt out on them after about a month. And so, no, they went and spent a few weeks away, and we just let, hope the cover crop grew, and went out there and put some more seeds in the ground, some worm season stuff that I was hoping in that July time frame had enough moisture, it'd pop right out of the ground and really grow and give some feed for those cows, but it just wasn't enough. And then we kept moving them. Then we took off some barley oat hay, and that always regrows. And so there's some good growth there, and you don't get all the windrows. So we moved them over into that field, grazed that as long as we could. And then as soon as we got the weed off, we put them up on stubble and let them graze through the chaff rows and pick on that. But we were just behind. Too many cows. Not enough alternative pasture. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It just didn't work.
How did you get in touch with the cattle operation in Oregon?
It was actually through the conservation district. I met somebody.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
Cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was good or bad.
Yeah.
It was good. I learned so much.
Yeah.
And it's now I can laugh at it. Now I'm okay with it. But after weeks and weeks of phone calls from my neighbors about cows in their yards, it gets tiring.
Can you tell that story about what you did for your neighbors, like at the end?
So yeah, we had a few incidents, and the Whitman County Fair, I was up there all day, and I came home, and about 9:00 at night, I got a phone call from our neighbor, and they said, "Hey, Alan, do you know if your cows are in?" And I said, "I have no idea. It's dark out." She goes, "Well, I have about 100 cows in my front yard." And I said, "Oh, they're not my cows, but I think I'm responsible for them."
Yeah.
So we had that, and then they were in neighbors' wheat. They were just everywhere. So at the end of the year, I went down to Costco and I bought about 5 freezer packs, or the vacuum packs of Costco steaks, and we brought them up, sorted them out, did family sizes for all our neighbors, and vacuum packed them with a baked potato and an asparagus. And I wrote little notes, and I said, I hope you like your cows on the barbecue rather than your front yard. And just tried to repair relationships. And luckily had great neighbors. I don't think they were ever broke.
That's good.
So, but talking to them and just making sure they understood that this isn't exactly what we wanted for myself as well as
everybody else.
Yeah.
So and then the end of that year, it seems like you weren't gung ho to get cows.
No, I was done.
Yeah.
No, by the end of that, I told her, we're done. We'll never, ever have cows. It's too much work. You can't keep them in. There's too much logistics. You have to have alternative pasture. That's huge. Having that alternative spot. So if you get ahead or behind, or you need to do something in the field, just grazing them in one little spot until we get this really dialed, it's not realistic.
Yeah.
And having a hard start time, that's got to be weather dependent. You got to really be able to pivot quickly. A wheat crop, you always have time, and that's how my mind works. Is I'm a grain and farmer. Yeah. And boy, the cows, it's if a cow's thirsty, they got to drink. Yeah. You have to fix that now. It's not in an hour. It's now. And when they're walking towards the highway, same thing. And so it's just a different mindset. And I don't know that I'm cut out for it. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Do you mind talking a little bit about like the arrangement you had with the cattle operation?
Yeah, that first one.
Yeah.
That was contractual, and so we were going to get paid on the AUM. So that's an animal unit per month. And so a mom and a baby are one animal unit. And so if they would spend a month on our farm, we'd get $26. And so that's $26 in AUM. When we pivoted and had to go onto the alfalfa, we had to set something up kind of last minute because that alfalfa had significant value. When we were haying it, hay was up like $220, $250 a ton. Oh, wow. And so there was a lot of value there. And I wasn't willing just to go put them on the AUM because I didn't want, I wanted to hay it. I didn't want to graze it, but we had to. And so we did that. We worked out a payment for that, brought them back, and that was it. They were in charge of the fencing. They were in charge of keeping them in. They were in charge of making sure they had water. I had to supply it. So I put a reservoir up on top of the hill that can gravity to our whole home farm. And as long as that was full, that was the extent of me providing the water. They had to get the hoses and everything else ran. And so, yeah. And when somebody's not from here,
Yeah.
the geography matters.
Yeah.
And so they had a cattleman close that was helping manage these cows, but it soon got just overwhelming for him.
Yeah. Were they out there like every day? Was there a cowboy out there?
At least every other.
Okay.
Yeah, they had to be.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just with the sheer numbers.
Yeah.
So, and maybe on, if you had the right amount of feed and everything was going smooth where those cows wanted to be in, I think you could get away with, every couple of days, as long as you had somebody at least watching.
Mm-hmm.
And since I lived there, it made it a lot easier.
Yeah.
If these were remote, somebody's has to be there every day.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah. And then would you say that water was one of the biggest challenges? Or no?
Well, yeah, definitely. But I mean, it started out with too much water with rain.
Yeah.
It was swampy when we had those cows out there. But just getting the cattle water, they drink a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, well, I could just take a truck out there and they can drink off of that truck. That should work.
Mm-hmm.
180 pair would drink 3,000 gallons a day when it's hot.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of water to be moving. And we aren't set up during our harvest, our grain harvest, to be go hauling water for cattle.
Yeah.
And so to get that set up, and now I'm set up, it's easier. So I just did that, luckily. If I wouldn't have had my reservoir up on top of the hill and been prepared for this, it wouldn't have went near as well as it did.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
huh.
And it didn't go well. So,
so at the end of that first year, you're like, I'm never doing this again.
yep.
But then
I was done.
Then what happened?
Yeah. Then Flourish happened.
Yeah.
So, Tammy called and said, we have this thing called Flourish. I said, oh, what's that? That sounds good. She goes, well, it's covers and cows. And
yeah.
I said, I'm out.
Yeah.
And
she said, just one, real quick, just for everybody that's listening, Tammy Stubbs was a former employee of the Palouse Conservation District that helped start the program.
Yeah. Yeah. She was instrumental in getting me roped into this.
Yeah.
And so I say roped in because I'm
pun intended.
Still not.
Yeah.
There was a financial incentive to keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really the beauty of the program and programs like this is it allows us to really experiment on things that maybe aren't really in our comfort zone, and it mitigates our risk. And so by having that ability, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try again. We can't give up on the cows, but we scaled back huge. I went from 180 pair to it fluctuated a little bit this summer between 20 and 30 steers, and that was a much more manageable number. And I partnered up with local cattleman Dallas Stout, who runs cattle about 5 miles south of my house.
Oh, nice.
And so and he also helps us out on the farm, and he's a friend.
Yeah, that's great.
And I have a saying, if you're in a partnership, it's friendship before partnership, and that's super important. And so that's worked with Dallas and I.
Great.
So we he's helping me out. He's got my cows right now. So
good.
Yeah, one of my heifers is about to have a calf any day.
Oh, nice.
About to become a cow dad.
Yeah.
I've never done that. So
that's cool. So he'll do, and that arrangement is he'll take them in the winter and do like all the calving and stuff, and then bring them back out.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, this is pretty informal.
Okay, cool.
So he has three cows of mine.
Oh, no.
Three heifers.
Yeah.
And so 2 of them are pregnant. One of them we can't get pregnant, so she's going to the sale. And so yeah, if I had a bunch of cattle, I don't think this would work. But,
yeah, absolutely.
We're trying, so he's putting up with that for now.
Okay.
And it's a pretty loose relationship. We're both learning.
Yeah.
We're learning if we like doing it, if it's worth doing. Because that's the other challenge that we run into is grazing in the mountains is pretty inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the alternative that most cattlemen in this area do, is they have either BLM contracts or private landowner contracts, and they're taking their cattle to the mountain.
Yeah.
So that's where they summer.
Yeah, that's funny. I hadn't really thought about that. They probably don't have to pay that much to get a lease. And then
not if you compare what they have to pay in the mountains to what we need to make grazing covers in a farm field financially viable. Not a moneymaker, just a break even.
Yeah.
It doesn't even come close.
Doesn't pencil out.
No.
Even like with transportation costs too.
Yeah.
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 Interesting.
Yeah. They can haul them a long ways and not pay much.
Yeah.
And so
That's cool. So did you say how many acres you were grazing the 20 to 30 cows on?
30.
Oh, it was just the 30. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then the fencing that you put in this year, that was you bought that? And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
did it all
I actually bought it from the grazers that were there the first year.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure it worked based on the first year.
Yeah.
Turns out it did.
Yeah.
So
that's good. And
yeah.
you'll stick with like the same stocking rates this next year, you think? Like 20
Yeah.
30? Okay.
Yeah, like 1-to-1.
Mhm.
One animal per acre. And that's going to be a year-to-year thing, and you're going to have to be able to go up and down with that based on what the crop is doing. So, but yeah, 1-to-1. And then last year we got outran with the cover crop. It was growing too well, so we swathed grazed it. Came in right after the oats started heading out because I did not want them to go to seed or the triticale. So we swathed that, laid it down in windrows, and then put the cattle on it. And they did a really good job of kicking through it and eating those windrows. A lot better than I thought. I was worried it was going to mold.
Yeah.
But
That happened like pretty quick. Huh.
yeah.
But did you have to do anything? Did the cows pretty much just terminate the cover crop then? Or did you spray?
Yeah, we had to terminate.
You did?
Yeah, with herbicide.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. What was it? So it was mainly like a forage mix that you had? Do you
yeah,
remember?
I don't
there's a lot of
remember
stuff-
what was
yeah.
in it. It had a lot of barley and oats in it.
Okay.
Oh, and I know sunflowers were in there. Cows don't seem to like sunflowers. It's
Mhm.
kind of cool. They walk around them.
Really?
And so yeah, if
Yeah,
you
that's funny.
if you do a good job grazing, where you really get it mulched down, they'll leave the sunflowers, and so you'll just have little sunflowers out in the field, kind of pretty.
Was there Phacelia in there? Do you know?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's funny. I saw a lot of Phacelia in a lot of the plots, and I couldn't remember if there was some
Oh,
in yours.
was it good? Should I?
I don't know. I mean,
I'm
looks
looking
good.
for advice.
Well, it's interesting. We have these like small farming friends. I don't know if it's good for grazing. I have no idea, but they think it's like the best cover crop. Like
Really?
they always use Phacelia. Yeah. They use Phacelia in like cereal rye.
Oh, well, I'm probably not going to use cereal rye.
no,
but
exactly.
what are they trying to get out of the facility?
It's mycorrhizal
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
I don't know and yeah, I'm like out of my depth here, but they really like it, and yeah, I should ask them more questions. And
I'd be interested in that, because that's why we did flax.
Mhm.
It's shown to have a mycorrhizal interaction with oats,
Mhm.
and I can't put my finger on why the oat crop is better and why the soil is better after flax and oats, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's cool.
yeah, I don't need to know how it works as long as it does.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. There's like these smaller farms. Maybe they're like small organic farms, but they're always like cover cropping every year in their beds. And I was like, oh, I'd love to connect like the big farmers with the small farmers.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's very different because it's like irrigated
Hard.
and
Yeah.
but even just like sharing ideas.
And
like
margins. The financial margins are so much different.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. And so you invest, $100
Mm-hmm.
into an organic farm
Mm-hmm.
on an acre.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You multiply that by 1,000,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden,
Yeah, it's a whole lot.
it's a whole lot.
Yeah,
and so $100 an acre is an unrealistic number
Mm-hmm.
for us to do almost anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Is there anything that you are going to do differently in those plots next year that you did this year? As far as like seeding or
As anything with farming, you don't really know what you're doing until you're doing it.
uh-huh.
And so I planted fall wheat on those acres with the intention I was going to take it to harvest.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm watching wheat price plummet,
Mm-hmm.
and decided, why don't I put the cows right in the same spot? So I'm going to interseed spring crops into my winter wheat stand
Mm-hmm.
and graze the winter wheat and the covers together.
Cool.
Yeah. And it should be good. I'm hoping I can get the cattle out there a little bit earlier because we have a lot of good growth,
Mm-hmm.
and that wheat should start taking off here.
Yeah, especially this year.
Yeah. It's big right now.
Yes, yeah, I know.
So for February.
Yeah.
But-
It's insane.
Yeah. So I don't know. I maybe that middle of May, maybe we can get the cattle out there a couple of weeks earlier.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
but that'll all depend. It depends when the snow stops.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So shifting gears a little bit, I just have like questions about like programs and like maybe research in general.
Yeah.
Because to me, it always seems like even at the conservation district, we're like 5 steps behind what everybody's trying to do. And there's like I don't know if you do this, but like SAP testing is one example where like a lot of folks are doing it, and then the researchers are like, we don't know what does this do, like, but people are doing it, you know.
Yeah.
Are there things that like you would like to see either researched or like you could do or we could do that would help offset risk that we're not doing, or like it's really just ideas, like brainstorming?
It's hard. As a farmer, we only have to prove it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
As a research organization, you have to prove it
Mm-hmm.
and follow the scientific method
Mm-hmm.
and actually prove it.
Yeah.
It's easy to prove something to yourself, even if it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Typically, you can find enough information to make yourself think that it's right. And I'm good at doing that.
Yeah.
So that's what's hard. So we'll get an idea and we can go implement it on the farm, and we can do our experiments and go, that's fine. But then by the time that a research organization or a conservation district gets the idea,
Mm-hmm.
you got to take a year to even figure out the idea,
Mm-hmm.
implement it the first time, and then start to replicate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I think in agriculture, that's why there's that sense of these researchers are behind.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they are. I just think they're doing it the correct way,
Mm-hmm.
where we're, again, only proving it to ourselves.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and that kind of ties into what you're saying earlier about just like if you're amortizing what you're doing for your soil over time, because it's not just like you plant a cover crop once and then like that's gonna.
That was my original thought.
yeah.
This is the silver bullet.
Yeah, totally.
It's not.
No, I know. Yeah.
Which it's not frustrating.
Yeah.
But sometimes you read an article and it makes it seem like one cover crop will change your farm forever.
Yeah.
That's just not the case.
No.
Or maybe it is, and I just don't know what I'm doing.
Well, no, I like Frank Wolf, one of your neighbors. He's another farmer nearby. He would always say it's like not always rainbows and unicorns. Like, like try this stuff. Yeah. And then it just like doesn't.
Sometimes the unicorn dies.
Yeah. The cows get into your neighbors.
Yeah.
Was there... so I have maybe 2 more questions. The first is, so it seems to me, and I could be totally off on this, but even since I started working at the Conservation District 8 years ago, something's shifting. And maybe it's just because like the whole idea of direct seeding has been around for a long time and people are doing that. But now this like regenerative ag, whatever you want to call it, like soil health push.
Yeah. Do
you think that's happening, or is it just the circle I work in perception? It seems like more and more people are more and more interested in this, and I'm just wondering why.
Yeah. I don't know, because that's kind of the circle I run with.
Yeah.
And so the peers that I'm around most often are thinking the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is definitely becoming more mainstream in agriculture.
That's what I was wondering too.
Yeah. There's a lot more talk about carbon amendments, even from the big ag retailers. That's in their blends now, and it's just a commonplace. And so, I do think there's a big push. I do think there is a change in agriculture happening right now.
Yeah.
Where the emphasis is on the soil, not just a crop.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah.
And do you think that's driven by, there's obviously market forces drive a lot of things.
Yeah.
But like the price of inputs.
I think that's part of it.
Goes up.
Yeah.
And
I like to think it's just farmers being good stewards.
Yeah. I agree.
I hope that's part of it. And I think it is.
Yeah. That's what everyone says.
Well, yeah, that's the line we give people.
So I had this intern that worked for me my first year, and he was great. I was like, at the end of his internship, I was like, is there anything you learned this summer? And he's like, yeah, that farmers actually care about the soil. And I was like, yeah, man.
But that's a shift.
Yeah, totally.
Boy, 40 years ago, I'm not sure they even thought about the soil.
Yeah.
We haven't farmed very long.
Mm-hmm.
Our farm was homesteaded in 1876. And so that's when the native Palouse soil on our farm started to be farmed.
Yeah.
It's only 148 years.
Mm-hmm.
In geological time, that's a blink.
Yeah.
Barely even a blink. I'm not even sure you got your eyes closed yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first generation, so I'm the 5th. The first generation, they did not have any synthetic inputs, so they did it with covers. There was plow down clovers and plow down alfalfa, and they do things more organically. They cared. But that's all they knew.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they knew how much knew that what they were doing was that good for the soil. And then, the Green Revolution and the introduction of anhydrous ammonia, we kind of forgot. We started to think we can inject into the soil whatever our growing crops need. And that's the way to do it. And then we came to the realization that, well, that's not great for the environment. It's not great for the soil. It's not great for our the web of life in our soil. And so now we're realizing that. We're realizing that there's more going on beneath the surface and that we need to foster that environment. And so it's driven by market forces, financially. That's the biggest one. Could I make money just putting synthetic inputs in right now? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I'd make as much or more money doing that. I'm not positive I could do that in 30 years. I really did start to see a degradation of our soil just watching our soil tests every year. And then we went into no-till thinking we could repair soil with just no-till and doing the same old. That didn't really work. And we plateaued. We made a little bit of improvement and then it just kind of stopped. And so now we're focusing on biology and carbon inputs and reduction in synthetic fertility.
That's cool.
So, and we've been pretty successful.
When you said you plateaued, was that like organic matter hit a plateau, or I don't know?
That's kind of that's the benchmark that I use is organic matter. Cation exchange capacity CEC is an important one that we watch. But just watching our crops and just watching the soil. We'd take a soil probe out there and we'd get hard pans. We could find strativization from fertility layers, and it wasn't getting better. We thought all that'd go away. Put a cover crop in, break that all up, and it was going to be like rainbows and unicorns. There you go. Yeah. So, and it wasn't. And so now we're realizing there's more to it. We got to get all these salt-heavy fertilizers reduced for now. I'm not sure we're going to eliminate them. I don't want to pick on the term organic, but for me, it's not conventional and organic that's going to be the answer. It's going to be middle ground. Yeah. There's going to be some synthetic things that are going to be beneficial to our farm management practices. But I do think it's a lot closer to the organic side than we are today. Yeah. But I don't think it's black and white. Nothing in agriculture is black and white. There's so much gray.
Yeah. And like trade-offs in like so many different directions.
Yeah. And our topography on the Palouse, organic's pretty tillage heavy. And that's erosion heavy for us. And so, in the organic world, if you're in the right topography, the right geography, the right rainfall, it's great. And certain crops it's better at than what we're growing. I'm sure there's a really good way to grow organic wheat and organic garbanzos. I just don't know it. Yeah. And so I'm not there. I'm not there.
No, that's
And I don't even know if that's my goal.
No. Yeah.
I think my goal's in the middle.
So another thing I think about a lot is, two things that we still know very little about the soil. I feel like that if you talk about like a soil ecosystem, and they say like, I forget what the quote is, in a spoonful of soil, there's as many organisms as there are humans in the world or something.
Something like wild like that. Yeah.
And so, it seems like that knowledge gap is like maybe getting smaller, hopefully. Like a lot of people are doing research because of this big push for like soil health and regenerative ag, which is cool.
Yeah. I'm more overwhelmed by it every year. Though. That's the problem.
I know.
The more I know, the less I know. And that's what's wild. And how everything interacts and you try one thing and that might be detrimental to something else. And so to start understanding that balance is where we need to be. And so I'm trying to do kind of the not death by 1,000 paper cuts, but improve by 1,000 paper cuts. Anytime I can do something small to improve my overall management strategy, I'll try to take that small step.
Cool.
And if I can keep making enough small steps, maybe eventually it'll turn into something big.
Yeah.
And so that's the approach I'm doing on most of the farm.
Yeah.
The flourish acres, because I have that ability with, a little bit of financial help, I can take a big step.
Yeah.
I can put the cattle out there. I can do the cover crops. I can get rid of almost all my synthetics and just go for it and really learn, is maybe this extreme approach to strategy. So that's been really helpful. It's been fun.
Cool. That's great.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I hate it other times.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's always another thing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think is super interesting is like you guys, your career, and I feel like we've talked about this in almost every podcast, but it's like 45 growing seasons maybe before you.
Something like that. I'm not even sure I want it to be that long.
Yeah, no,
So-
yeah. Let's say 30 to 40.
Yeah.
And like, I just, the time it takes for things to change is a long time.
Yeah.
So it could be a whole career before. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a career.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so but it's our responsibility.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
I really think that, now that we have the knowledge and an understanding that maybe what we are doing isn't the best way.
Mm-hmm.
It's our responsibility to improve upon that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure I won't be where I want to be at the end of my career, but hopefully I'm closer to what I think is a more environmentally friendly way to farm.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too bogged down in that because
yeah.
the most important thing on our farm is financial sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make money. We cannot invest back into the soil unless we're making money.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can try to sell this as yes, we're just these great stewards and we're giving it all back to the land. But the reality is we do have to make money while doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Do you have, is there any complications? I don't know how the farm works, but do you lease land and are you less likely to cover crop that or try some other things on leased land? Like with
Are any of my landlords listening?
we don't have to talk about it.
No. It's most important is an open conversation with your landlords. What do they want?
Yeah.
Do they want a maximum return or do they want to see some soil improvement? What's their goals?
Mm-hmm.
And so we work with each other.
Yeah.
And so if a landlord is particularly interested in soil health and trying to improve their soil, then yeah, we'll go out there. If they say no, I don't want it, I just want max yield on these acres, we'll farm for the landlord.
Yeah.
And so
That's the arrangement. Yeah.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
Good.
I don't want to get too bogged down into just this philosophy that I want.
Yeah.
I can't push that on landlords.
And
So.
I think, yeah. And I appreciate that you said that. Like, yeah, you need to make money. Like, this is your profession and
Yeah.
like business. So
Yeah, that's our business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But my business needs to look into the future
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of it. And so do I need to make all the money this year? No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Do I want to make it, when I'm 60?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do.
yeah.
So if I can better the soil in the next 20 years, and so I'm kind of on cruise control going into retirement,
Yeah, that's cool.
and then what land I'm lucky enough to own at that point, I can lease out for above market value and make a little extra money.
Yeah.
I'm all in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I was talking to this soil scientist at WSU,
mhm.
and they were saying they were like a little scared about like all this talk about like regenerating biology in the soil to create a sustainable system, because at some point like you'll start mining all the nutrients that crops will need from the soil, right? Like their take was like, you're always gonna have to add something
Mhm.
to it. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, and you kind of talked about this earlier, and that's what made me think of it is, yeah, like you're doing these things to create better soil, but the bottom line is you're probably always going to have to adding something.
I don't think you can take out as much as we take out without adding something.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, at the end of the year, it's you're raising a crop, a commodity, and so you take out X number of pounds of wheat or garbanzos or canola. Those seeds contain nutrients. You've taken that from the soil, and a lot of that has been harvested through sunlight and oxygen and the air, but not all of it. But to get our soil cycling so that they're releasing the mineralized nutrients that are there. If you look at a big bubble, a circle that a plant needs and what's in the soil, the part of the bubble that is the biggest by far are nutrients in our soil that are not plant available. And that's because we don't have the biology to release those. Yeah. And they're in a mineral form.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot out there. Our phosphate levels.
I know, that's what I always talk about. That.
Yeah. And I can't remember the quote on that. It's like there's 1,000 years of phosphate out there.
Yeah.
Or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
But it's tied up.
And the plants can't get it.
Yeah. And so how do we make that available?
That's cool. And then maybe my last question is just like, it could be either the Flourish work that you've done this last year or just cover cropping and grazing in general, were there any surprises or things that you learned? It's kind of like the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to be a cowboy. I don't. I thought it's not that hard. It's kind of romantic. You get to go out there and run the cattle and you know, you're the Marlboro man.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is it's more mud and picking up fences and fixing fence and putting in water. It's grunt work and you got to be there. So when the cows get out, you got to go home and you got to put them back in.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that, you know, cattle are a dynamic enterprise and it is always changing.
Yeah.
So I used to always say, if the wheat's not growing, I'm not going. And I kind of like that. So,
yeah.
There was that, you know, and some of the things, you know, how much you can affect soil in 1 year. I've done more to harm our soil in 1 year than I think I've ever done to make it better.
Really?
In a single shot. So a lot of compaction issues, weed issues that can be introduced through cover crops in the unknown. And so you got to really be careful what you plant, when you put things in, how you do things, what your next step in the rotation is. Herbicide carryovers can be a big issue.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize. And the more I realize this herbicide carryover thing, the more I think we might have a bigger cocktail of carryovers in our soil than we know.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? Like what happened with the herbicide carryover?
Oh, just with different cover crops, things that I thought would grow after certain herbicides that are on label, but they're pretty alternative. And so they aren't specifically mentioned. They'll be in like the other crops part or just farther down in the label that I'm not used to going to. And so I do think that we have this cocktail in our soils of just the stuff that we're applying, and we don't understand how it's interacting with the biology in our soil.
Yeah.
We just don't.
Huh.
Oh, and it's always changing.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to try to reduce that and get back to a more, you know, organic cycling of this is got to be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Well, this has been great, Alan. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
us.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. This is great. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast was brought to you by the Palouse Conservation District. Funding is provided by USDA's Conservation Innovation Grants Program.
To find out more information, check out the Flourish website at inwflourish.org.
Thanks so much for listening, and keep an eye out for our next episode.